And welcome back to the Daily News. Steve Gaito has joined us now. He is a certified financial planner and owner of Retirement Resource Management. He is a friend of WHHI, and today, as our friend, he's going to give us some advice and some tips about dealing with debt. And he just gave me a startling statistic that after COVID, about 70% of everyone over 55 has some debt and is facing debt and how to pay that debt off and the different types of debt we're going to be talking about. So Steve, welcome.
Welcome. Glad to be here. That statistic caught me off guard a little bit. And also, since COVID, that the total amount of debt has increased by basically $1/3 of $1 trillion.
That's just amazing. It's really very scary in a lot of ways.
Well, and it impacts retirees pretty significantly because the more debt you accumulate, the more it impacts your bottom line and your cash flow. So, if you have an extra $500 that's got to be paid back for your debt, that's $500 you can't use for other things like food and groceries and
right.
Car washes.
Mm-hmm. Well, so Steve, what are the different types of debt that folks are facing today?
Yeah, and that's a good question because people carry different types of debt. This is not about those that use their credit card for convenience, those that pay it off every single month. That type of debt's really not a problem. But those that carry a balance, as the credit card companies increase the interest rates that they're charging, that becomes a burden to folks. And, it's just a natural, kind of situation right now with people having to deal with inflation and, just lack of return on their investments. They're turning to credit cards to be able to cover that gap right now.
Would you say most folks over 50 or let's say 65 actually own their own homes, or do they have mortgage debt?
Well, that's something that I've seen. It's an interesting trend. So, 10 years ago when I was doing plans, the goal was to get everybody out of their mortgage before they retired. And I'd say it's about 50% of them still carry a mortgage. Some of them for convenience, some of them for cash flow. They need a place to stay, and that works out cheaper than rent. So
right.
that carrying a mortgage from that perspective isn't really a bad deal. But later on, as cash flow becomes more tight, that can be a problem because that's yet another thing that's still got to be paid back.
All right, so give us some good advice, Steve, on paying off debt and maybe priorities too. What debt should be paid off first, and down the way.
Yeah, and there's a lot of different strategies that are out there. The one I like is kind of the snowball. Dave Ramsey uses it. Before Dave, it was Larry Burkett. So it's nothing new, but it's basically listing all your debts from the largest balance to the smallest balance and paying off that smallest balance first, and then rolling the extra money into the next one up the line until it's all gone. From a practical standpoint, that seems to work real well. Others are, you want to pay off the highest interest rates, and depending upon your situation, if you've got those high interest credit cards, I'd look to refinance them some other way, either rolling it into an equity line if you're able to, or even some credit cards will do balance transfers for you. So that's one way they can do it. For folks that are retired and they carry a mortgage, if cash flow becomes a problem, something that really is starting to be talked about are reverse mortgages. And a reverse mortgage can allow you to actually take all your debt that you've got in your mortgage on your house and basically roll it forward and have no mortgage payment. The debt continues, but it's paid off at your debt. And for some retirees that are having cash flow problems, that's not a bad option. It's an expensive option, but not a bad option.
Actually in the future, I want to talk more about reverse mortgages. I think that's a very interesting topic. Kind of it puts me back a little bit, but maybe for some that is a good option.
Well, they were predatory to begin with, and they've been regulated to a much more higher standard. Mm-hmm. The fees have become more reasonable, and really it's all about cash flow. And if people are able to get out of that largest payment, which is usually their mortgage, that leaves a lot more freedom for them to be able to do other things in retirement.
Very good. And of course, having a plan, preparing for the future, preparing for retirement, that's what Steve Gaito is all about with Retirement Resource Management. Steve, it's good to see you again, and we'll see you in a few weeks. Thank you so much.
Good.
Thanks, Robyn, and thanks to everyone else who contributed to the show today. Thanks to SM Bradford Company and Currents, my wardrobe sponsor, for today's look. As always, our production team is behind the scenes to make all of this possible, and of course we are honored that you have chosen to share a part of your day with us. I'm Betsy McDaniel, and we'll see you for the next WHHI-TV Daily News.